Hey VC, I'm back. It's been a little while. I got an update. A lot of stuff that I picked up. I'm going to try to turn this down so I don't get tagged on YouTube. We are listening to this, which is a Prefab Sprout. Two Wheels Good. It's a band from the 80s. Full disclosure, I hate the 80s. I think everything, 90% of it sounds like crap, and I grew up in the 80s, to a certain extent, and it was really sort of just, what's the word, disoriented, but I don't know, I'm just not interested in what was going on at all, and while I like some stuff, I've come around to like some things. I can name something: Joy Division, Talk Talk, Elvis Costello's work. Bruce. Prince. There's some good stuff, but I just don't like the sound of the '80s in general. But this is not half bad. And in fact, if you're an '80s fan, you'd probably love this, and you probably already know it. But yeah, I'm kind of liking it. It's not too bad. It's a little more interesting than what I thought it might be. I took a chance on it, even though, as I mentioned, I hate the 80s. So anyway, that's what's playing in the background right now. I'm just going to go through these at random, and I don't know what's coming up next. So what is this? Just while I was down in Florida. Dave Grusin. It is a sort of, is this 70s or 80s? 76 jazz record. Pianist Dave Grusin, Ron Carter's on bass, Lee Ritenour on guitar. So good band. Recorded live from the studio, direct to master disc, Sheffield Lab release. That's why I got it, because it's kind of an audiophile release. And it does sound amazing. And actually the music is really good, too. I'm not, again, like some of the 70s sort of jazz. I like the early 70s, like fusion stuff. I love the Miles stuff from the 70s, but I kind of lose the thread a little bit. But, who knows? Maybe this gave me some hope, because I thought this was pretty good. It's actually got the theme from Beretta on it, too. Keep Your Eye on the Sparrow. Can't forget that one. So I really like this, and it again sounds amazing. I guess Sheffield Labs was I assume it's Rob Sheffield. I haven't even read it, but who is it? Rob Sheffield that did this. They're and I want to say, great engineer, but I'm not finding a name here. I think that's his name. But it is a, I guess they did some, I don't know what other releases are. I've never seen a release on this label, but I recognize the name, so I took a chance on it. And I know Dave Grusin from his really sort of movie, I think, TV and movie work, if I recall. So, anyway, I'm not going to read it here, but that's that. Who's this? Elvin Jones, Coltrane's quartet drummer, one of the greats, simply one of the greats. Blue Note release, Polycurrents it's called. A lot of drumming on this one. There's percussion and drums, so it's it is Polycurrents is pretty apt. There's some conga in here, as well as Elvin just going wild on the drums. I gave it one listen through, and it's pretty cool. Very intense, as you might expect. What's this? Oh, here's another guy, Gary Burton and Stefan Grappelli. Stefan Grappelli, of course, the violinist who used to play with Django Reinhardt and he kind of had a resurgence in the '70s. I have a couple albums where he guested on some people's stuff, and always great. Just that very, recognizable violin sound. Um, you'd know it anywhere if you're familiar with the Django stuff and the stuff he did back then in Paris. Um, so, yeah, again, one listen through. This was very nice. Burton plays vibra harp. I don't even know what the hell that is, but this was very nice. I don't know if I pointed this out before. I think I might have, but Sunset Waiting. I had it out because I was playing it. John G. Perry. Never heard of the guy. Never heard of this. But I really, really dig it. It's kind of mellow. It's not jazz. It's not rock. It's not really prog. It's somewhere. It's all those things and more. It's got some interesting. It's kind of like I don't know if it's like a concept, but there's some sort of incidental sounds like of I don't know, rivers or forests or things, which give it a nice atmosphere. It's on Decca and sounds incredible. Wonderful pressing on Decca. And if you can find it, if you see this, and if you're at all interested in sort of prog and jazz from the '70s, especially the British stuff, definitely get this because I think this is great. Well, I I found this in Florida, and it's a first pressing, so I picked it up, forgetting that I had this. Yet another first pressing. Now, this one's a little bit beat up, and I think this one sounds a little bit better, so I'm probably going to end up selling this one, even though it's got all Scotch tape on it. But the record plays very nicely, so it's in good shape. So I'm probably going to end up selling this one. Interesting thing, it's a slightly different, of course, yeah, slightly different, and of course this cover doesn't look as good as this one, so I'm between a rock and a hard place. Slightly different shade to the label, but they both have the first pressing matrix numbers, so I don't know what to make of that. Maybe some of you know. If you do, leave a note on the comment on the page. Obviously, I haven't said this is Love Forever Changes, of course. If you know what that different label is, maybe they were using two different shades of label at the time on Elektra. I don't know, but I did get that. This was interesting. Lindisfarne, Fog on the Tyne, kind of a pop folk, proggy, again, British. I don't want to say, they're not British, but they're from like Wales or something, and someone's going to get really mad at me. I really don't know. But this is good. It's produced by Bob Johnston, who I interviewed, by the way, and engineered by Ken Scott, who I also interviewed. So you can find on the High and Low Podcast webpage, High and Low Podcast at blogspot.com, I think. You can find my interviews with both the great producer Bob Johnston, who of course produced Dylan and Simon & Garfunkel and Johnny Cash, and Ken Scott, of course, was an engineer for the Beatles and produced David Bowie. So this is very accessible, and really good. I don't know if I'd call it great, but for me, but definitely worth having. And a nice sounding record too. Also, again, Ken Scott, great engineering on there. Picked up this Quincy Jones soundtrack to The Italian Job, starring Michael Caine. Am I going to say it? You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. I can't do it, but watch The Trip. You'll see them do it. And this is really nice. It's short. There's not a lot on it. It feels like it's 20 minutes long, but again, a great sounding record. Quincy Jones, of course. Great music, great sound. So, this is really good. I don't think I've ever seen the original. Actually, I need to go out and get that. Taking a complete left turn, Rupert Holmes, Partners in Crime. This is the one with Escape, the Pina Colada song on it. I got this because sometimes I like this cheesy 70s stuff. Sometimes there's some treasures buried on these albums that, if I pointed out a couple already, I think I was pointing out David Gates from Bread. His solo album is great from the same period, late 70s. It's kind of a peak moment probably for me. I like a lot of stuff in the late 70s, probably because I was 12 or 13 at the time, and I don't know, that stuff, maybe that sticks with you. I can't help it, but I love, even though I didn't see the movies at the time, some of the movies from that time, like Little Romance and what's it called, Rich Kids, Breaking Away. I didn't see those movies at the time, but I went back and I just love that period, and I love those movies. This is okay, not great on my first listen, but definitely listenable. But I wouldn't call it a undiscovered gem. I don't even know how to say this. Jimmy Jeffrey Freefall. This is mono. It's on Columbia. It is a 2i. It's from the 60s. It's sort of like out there jazz. This is like very experimental stuff. So if you see this and you get it, I mean, it's very interesting, but be prepared. This is influenced by, Webern and Schoenberg, and Berg as much as it is by Charlie Parker. So it's classified as jazz, but that's almost a stretch. But very, very interesting stuff. This was very nice. Point of Departure, Gary McFarland. Again, a couple, white guy jazz albums here, but this is also this was very nice. Again, a great sounding record on Impulse. It's original. Again, say on the Impulse label, and it's on ABC. It's from '72. This is very much like you would think it would be earlier. I didn't realize actually this is from '72. I would have placed this way earlier. So I don't know what to think, but I like this a lot. It's fairly straight ahead stuff. There's another love theme from David and Lisa. David and Lisa, of course, is a movie with Keir Dullea, the guy who ended up being in 2001. Frank Foster, The Loud Minority. This is sort of like right out of the protest movement, They might have been playing this at the Black Panthers meetings. There's some spoken word stuff on it. A lot of great names here. Jan Hammer and Elvin Jones on this. Kenny Rogers? I don't know what to think about that. Got a picture of a bunch of... It must be a different Kenny Rogers. A bunch of people on here. But, again, very much of its time. Did I love it? I don't know. It's sort of like... It probably is a little bit dated, being a sort of a protest album. But, very interesting. Another Quincy Jones record, Walking in Space. This one was really nice. And again, sounds amazing. It's on A&M Records. It's a promotional copy. This is like peak era Quincy Jones, I think. I mean, a lot of the mid-60s stuff, the soundtrack stuff is great too, but he really sort of hit his stride, I think, like in the early 70s. on his own. And I think he got Freddie Hubbard on here. This is just really, really good stuff. Highly recommended. I can't remember the other Quincy Jones album I have, but from that period, but it's not coming to me. I might have shown it, but that's great too. Maybe I'll pick it out sometime. Anyway, that's all. Oh no, one more. Found this. Sigur Ros's, I don't know, Parentheses album, that's what I call it. Untitled, I think it's called. On vinyl. Sounds okay. You know, it's a 2000 and whatever release. This is the follow-up to Agitas Berjan, which is their masterpiece. This is almost as good. It's a very good album. And I started to lose the thread after this one. Followed them for a few albums more, and I just lost interest. To me, either it was less inspired, and they got more popular as time went on for some reason. I don't know why, but to me, the music got less inspired than it was on these two albums, and you know, I don't know. Maybe they got away from the sort of more like lyrical, melodic style that they had here, but I think that's where they really excelled. So for me, Agitas Berjan, if I'm saying that right, and this one are the ones to get, and very happy to have this because this is great music. All right, that's all I got. See you next time.